take you through some green zone strategies and give you sort of hopefully a little bit more detail on some of the key ones. The green zone is when we're calm and regulated. We can manage the demands of whatever task is in front of us, and our logical wizard brain is kind of functioning as best it can. So green zone strategies are centered on the sort of connection and relationship with our children. They're proactive and preemptive, so they're not things we do when it all starts to fall apart. It should be happening before we ever get to the orange zone. So they're proactive, preemptive. They involve things like teaching, showing and modeling for our children. They can also involve sort of changes in adult expectations and responses, and then accommodations and assistance. As I said, they do require sort of wizard brain involvement. So we need to really draw on our logic, our planning, our reflection, our reasoning from us as parents and for our child. So these are not typically for orange or red zone times. You'll see little bits of overlap with some of them, but generally these are for times when you're able to kind of really think straight. So just before we go into the nitty gritty of it, I suppose, just to remind ourselves as parents, so no matter what sort of your family looks like, we as parents we're like the wizard brains of the family. And we have, I suppose, the maturity, experience, and usually the majority share of sort of power and control in the family. We can't at all ever change our children's kind of behaviours or emotions directly, so we can't kind of crawl inside, make them feel different, make them do different. Nobody can. We can only change what we have control over. So ourselves, our responses, our actions, and then whatever parts of the environment that might be within our control. So the majority of sort of what we call change responsibility lies with adults. So that's us as parents, and then teachers, SNAs, any other sort of important adults that might be kind of part of your child's life. So the good news is that while the kind of majority of the change responsibility lies with the adult, parents and children are so interconnected. So this little seesaw picture sort of here illustrates that. So if we shift or change something, so this is the parent over on this part here, and this is the child, this is kind of where you are now. Then if we sort of make a change or shift something in how we're responding, the child on the other side, will feel this, they'll detect this, just like we might feel someone shifting about on the other end of the seesaw, okay? And because we humans always like to get back to a sort of a settled, even keel, change in one person results in the other person changing also. And then we get back to this sort of new, even keel down here. So we can encourage change in our children by changing how we respond, what we do, and what we show them. The deal with, I suppose, sort of green zone strategies is they can be slow. They're not usually sort of linear. So this picture shows it now is how you might kind of think your journey looks at the top, and then the reality is a lot different with lots of pitfalls and difficulties along the way. So really it's about practice, patience with yourself, patience with your child, and gentle persistence. It's often about sort of try, fail, trial again, and there can be lots of elements of trial and error involved in the process of change. So one strategy is not going to work for everyone, and it is about sort of finding something that fits for you, fits for your child, fits for your family and your values. So green zone strategies, to kind of get a bit more detailed on them and what we as parents actually need to be doing and thinking about. It's about getting back to basics first. And we'll talk about sort of a hierarchy of needs now in a second. So having our sort of basic needs consistently met, and that's important, are a key foundation to building emotion regulation skills. Remember back to last week, we talked about the brain, the amygdala, and our amygdala is really easily destabilized by things like hunger, thirst, tiredness, or perceived lack of safety. So any threat at all is, destabilizes our brain and our amygdala in particular really easily. So back to basics is an essential foundation strategy. So this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This triangle, some of you might be familiar with this. And again, it's a widely used sort of model or idea to understand lots of things about human behavior. And this triangle, this hierarchy, reminds us that we cannot achieve these sort of higher order functions up the top here. So there's like self-actualization, esteem needs. Okay, we can't achieve those until these basics are in place, basically. So then the bottom here you have on the purple strip, you have physiological needs, so food, water, warmth, rest, and I've added in sensory needs. Okay, there might be other things so that you can think of. Then safety needs are the green strip next, and this is kind of physical safety and also psychological safety, and that can include predictability for our children. So I'm going to look at these two in a little bit more detail now to give you hopefully some practical ideas of what you might be thinking about. So the first green zone strategy then is this back to basics. So make sure your child's basic physiological needs are met insofar as you can. Food, water, warmth or cool, shelter, and their sensory needs. That would include kind of movement, which Rebecca talked about a lot, sensory diet and a suitable sensory environment. Then rest, and that would include kind of physical rest, mental rest and sensory rest. These can sound sort of simple, but as you all know, it's not always easy to get these in place consistently for our children. And there's pain and discomfort, and that would include if your child has sort of chronic constipation or toileting issues, that can impact as well. So I suppose as parents, it's just to reflect on which of these is in place and is consistently sort of being met for your child, which isn't, and is there anything as a parent you can do to assist in that? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. And just to say, the sensory needs can be a really significant consideration for neurodivergent people in particular, so autistic or ADHD or people with dyspraxia. So if we get the basics in place, this can really have a really significant positive impact on that person's ability to really regulate themselves and their nervous system and their emotions. It's important to say that, like, if these needs are not met consistently, it is unrealistic to expect our children to regulate themselves to the best of their ability. They just won't be able to do it. The next part of the back to basics strategy, I suppose, is this safety and sort of felt security needs. This is the little green strip on the triangle, if you like. So this is making sure, so if we don't feel safe, we won't be able to regulate ourselves and meet those emotional demands in a regulated way. Again, it's just not realistic to expect someone to do that. So this, like with the physiological needs, so this involves sort of stepping back as parents and reflecting on our children's safety and felt security needs. So I say felt security because it is their perception of their safety that is important. So even if we say, oh God, of course they're safe, they're, you know, in school, or whatever, if they don't feel safe, then that's the part that's going to have an impact, and that's the bit that matters. So again, for neurodivergent children, predictability and sameness can really contribute to their sense of safety. So a lack of predictability can feel really unsafe for some people and really arouse their nervous system, their threat system, their fear system is really activated. And if you remember back to sort of last week, when that threat and fear system's activated, that's our amygdala, and we're not able to access the full capacity of our sort of wizard brain and our regulation skills. So felt safety and security, really important. So just other sort of practical back to basics things, they might kind of look like these things, and I'll read through the list now. And as I'm reading it, you can just sort of say, okay, well, so for my child, my family, which back to basics factors are most important? There's sort of time for playfulness, fun and connection. Time to stim, if your child likes to stim and engage in spins, so special interest. Time to just be and unmask. So I've used that, I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that idea of masking. So it's the idea that for neurodivergent people, they can spend a lot of their day sort of trying to mask some of their maybe autistic or ADHD traits, and that is exhausting, and we need time to not have to do that. Time outside, so again, getting that balance with kind of green time and screen time, which I think Rebecca might have mentioned. And then I've written here subtract. So I think when we're sort of overwhelmed or dysregulated, we often think we need to kind of add something extra, whereas often doing less or subtracting something, be it a demand, an activity, an expectation, can be really helpful. So don't think about what you can add, maybe sometimes think about what you can kind of take away. Routine, structure and predictability we mentioned already. And time alone for some people can be extremely important, or downtime or no demands time. So a time when there's very little demands on us is important for all of us. Sensory play or a withdrawal or retreat space, Rebecca kind of mentioned as well, can be really important. Then positive touch, if your child likes that, hugs, cuddles, massage, any type of touch that is pleasant and regulating for your child, really important for the nervous system. Then movement, dance, music, exercise. So these are all those back to basics bit. So as parents, we wanted to have an honest look, I suppose, at our child's day and their week, and check they have enough time to sort of engage in the parts of this that they need and that they enjoy and that they like. So just to give you a quick example, once you've identified maybe which of these sort of back to basics factors are important, there's going to be lots of kind of really concrete things you can do to make this happen. So for example, to achieve more predictability, you might be using a rules poster, visual timetables, if then prompts, timers, cartoon strips, pictures. There's loads of things you can do practically that will help build predictability. So the first step is to sort of see, okay, which factor do I need to look at, and then think about, okay, how can I make that happen? I suppose one really important green zone strategy is to attend to your relationship with your child above all else. So this picture of the tree just illustrates how important our relationship with our children is. So the relationship is the roots. Without the connection and the relationship, any additional above the ground sort of strategies, which is the tree itself, they will not work as optimally as they might. Okay, so you can have all the fancy strategies in the world. If you don't have a connection and a relationship, they really won't. They might work a little bit, but they won't really work as well as they might. We know that it was from research, years of research, there's multiple things that impact on us and our children, but we know that a trusted relationship with at least one caregiver, okay, is the single best predictor of kind of long-term well-being and resilience for our children. So protect your relationship with them. And I'm not talking about a perfect or conflict-free relationship, because they don't exist, but it means a relationship based on understanding, trust and collaboration, where the adult can kind of see the child's point of view, meet the child's emotional needs, most of the time, without all their own emotions spilling over all the time, and where ruptures or disagreements or conflicts can be repaired. It's about this, as we say, rupture and repair. It's not about having, perfect and idyllic and never conflicting. That is not it. It's about having that ability to kind of repair and get things back on track. As you're kind of making decisions as a parent, to keep in mind that sort of negative interactions with our children, they erode our relationships over time. So if a certain task or activity is causing kind of lots of negative interactions with your child, so it could be common ones are like eating, toilet training, homework or study. So they're all kind of common depending on the kind of stage of life for your child and their age. It is time to pause, step back and evaluate, okay, what are the pros and cons of continuing to push or battle on something at the risk of eroding your relationship with your child. So what we would say is attend to your relationship above all else. The next one then is a bit similar, like it's a bit related to this, is to sort of evaluate our expectations. So if your child is consistently not, and this isn't like a one-off not coping, but consistently not coping with a situation or a demand. So the school bus home, homework time, sitting down as a family for meals, whatever it might be. A good green zone strategy is to sort of pause, step back and ask, okay, well, can we remove the demand or the expectation, or can we change it? So you might ask yourself, like, is this essential? Can we just drop this? Is this worth it? Again, thinking about the kind of erosion of trust and erosion of relationship. And what might we gain by just dropping this expectation or dropping this demand for now? And some parents can think, oh God, is that not kind of giving in, or, they'll never learn. But actually giving everyone space from the sort of stress and the pressure can free us up to think about creative solutions longer term. So we kind of can come out of that fight flight mode, and our wizard brain can engage fully, get our relationship back on track, and often you can come up with a more, an enjoyable solution longer term. And I would say if your child is really dysregulated in a situation, there isn't much learning happening anyway, because when we're dysregulated, our amygdala, our limbic system is in control. We can't really do much learning. We're just in survival mode. So it's sort of to really reflect on that and weigh it up. I guess there's lots of ways you can break things down as well. So you might kind of drop part of an expectation. So you might, think, okay, well, can we talk to the teacher about dropping the written homework, for example? Can we do weekend family meals and drop the expectation that weekday meals they're going to be able to sit at the table? Or can they manage the school bus in the afternoon but not in the morning, or vice versa? So it's sort of trying to tease the situation apart and think about it in that way. But to do that, we need to pause, step back, and that's really wizard brain is needed to do that. So another green zone strategy is around sort of building emotional literacy. And as I think I mentioned, emotional literacy is really a key foundation skill. It's the ability, it's kind of knowledge of emotions, having good language for emotions, and that might be sort of picture-based language or words-based language, however your child might communicate. So it can look like things that kind of have a selection of examples here, but there'd be endless ways you can do this. It might look a bit like sort of reading books, so they can be kind of general, just storybooks, and you just name and discuss how the characters might feel when certain things happen. And it can be at a really, from picture book level up to more complex stories, there's always a feeling to be picked out, and it can be really simple, it doesn't have to be complicated. Then you can there's like lots of books that are specifically around topics or emotions, so at loss, separation, anger, jealousy, sadness. And some of the local libraries have really good selections of the sort of whole section dedicated to sort of emotions and well-being and that kind of thing, so you can have a browse there. Then watching films or TV shows, if books not your child's thing or not your thing, TV shows, computer games, any sort of thing your child might be interested in or engage in, you can discuss how the characters felt, how we might feel watching. It doesn't have to be a big sort of discussion. It can just be a comment. Oh gosh, I guess Peter Rabbit felt really lonely when he lost all his friends in the wood, or gosh, he must feel so worried the fox is after him, whatever. So it doesn't matter. It's basic, and it's just trying to pepper it in throughout those ordinary chats you'd be having. Then as your child kind of gets older and you're kind of able to have those more everyday maybe conversations, stories from school, friends, it's just about attending to the kind of feelings part of the story. So, oh, well, I guess Mary felt a little bit, upset because she couldn't join in the game, or whatever it might be. So it's just trying to pick up on the feelings part and naming that and giving it, kind of making space for it. Then you can keep an eye out sort of for games or toys that promote emotional literacy. So there are some. And then finally, the key thing to remember with any of this is to sort of use any sort of special interests your child might have, use them and kind of meet them where they're at. So, keep it kind of at their level and then build from there. And it doesn't have to be, as I say, really involved or complicated. Simple is good. Here's just a few examples I just copied in as well. So you can use those sort of like books and TV shows and that, where you can actually get like lots of these like emotion specific charts and pictures. So here you can see there's these like emotion wheels. So there's a really basic one over here on the left, so maybe for a younger child. And then as your child gets kind of more comfortable, their vocab builds or their knowledge builds, you can get this more involved one here. These are just, you can just Google them, they'll come up. Or you can have a more of a chart style here with the little animals. So if your child is really into animals, you might go for one like that. And you can sort of have it hanging on the wall or the fridge. And kind of refer to it with your child. Some people like to put a little like a hand, like a clock in the middle, and then your child can move it around like a little dial to select how they're feeling, and that can work nicely if your child isn't using words yet. Then as you and your child's sort of confidence builds in using kind of words and language, you can introduce what we call sort of grades of emotion. So that idea that you can be a little bit annoyed, very annoyed, you can be angry, or you can be furious, and you're sort of grading it. And you can see here the colours, the green, orange, red colours. So there's things like the incredible 5-point scale, feelings thermometers, worry scales. Again, there's endless numbers of them. You can find, you can make your own, and it's just to give your child that idea of the kind of grades of feeling, and that there's little bits, medium bits, and lots. And kind of we know that the more sort of fine-grained our description and conceptualization of our emotions, the better able we are to sort of understand and regulate them. So you're just trying to sort of build that idea with your child. The next sort of key sort of green zone strategy is to sort of name and model emotion. So Rebecca has touched on this a little bit, but this, you know, sort of from a green zone point of view, it's trying to kind of weave it in all the time, not just at kind of orange times. Try by kind of naming feelings and emotions as they arise, so you and your child. So start basic and start small, so use language or pictures at your child's level, as I've already said. Remember the different kind of parts of emotion, so you can talk about the emotion, you can talk about the body feeling, thoughts, behaviours. You can pick one or two of those and kind of weave them in. You can go at this with kind of a curious guessing tone, so if you're trying to kind of name a feeling for your child but you're not quite sure, you can sort of say, I guess you might be feeling worried. Okay, so you can kind of guess it. And the goal is not to get it right, okay? But it's just to help your child notice the feelings part and sort of open the door of the conversation. That's all you want. And just say, get them, say, I'm kind of curious, you know, are you feeling a bit worried? And you're trying to help them be curious about how they're feeling themselves. And the overall goal you want, I suppose, is to send the message that feelings and emotions are important and we can talk about them and we can manage them in this family. So sometimes the message, and I suppose like certain generations got the message that feelings are not talked about. They're sort of suppressed, they're avoided, but they're definitely not talked about until they explosively came out somewhere else, or were sort of suppressed at great kind of personal cost to people. So I suppose it's often trying to relearn how we do things as parents ourselves now. You can add pictures, you can add love, signs, AAC as needed for your child. So it's trying to sort of take the idea and then see, well, how will it kind of work? You can use puppets, toys, figures, cars, diggers. You can, you know, be as creative as you can. For example, I'll just give you a couple of examples here. You might say something like, oh, I'm feeling so frustrated trying to fix this lawnmower. I'm going to take a deep breath, and you can model it and try something else. Okay, so you're kind of modeling for your child, you're naming the feeling, you're modeling how to cope with it in a kind of a helpful way. Okay, or if you notice your child might be feeling worried or anxious, well, you have a tummy pain and you're thinking about the new swimming lesson tomorrow. Okay, so you've named a body feeling for them, you've named a thought for them. I guess you might feel worried as well as a bit excited because it's so new. Okay, so you're sort of trying to, you're guessing. Okay, I think this is what's going on. They might say, no, ma'am, it's not. You know, it might be something different. They might not respond. Okay, it doesn't matter. You want to just repeat this sort of conversation, repeat kind of planting the seeds and making space for it, just an everyday chat. You want to kind of weave them in. They're natural and it kind of ends up being just a normal part of everyday life and sort of unremarkable. And when we make these smaller feelings natural and unremarkable, our children will come to us with the bigger feelings. And as parents, we want our children to be able to do that generally. So just to say as well, a common trap we can sort of fall into as parents is sharing kind of big feelings or adult worries before we've given ourselves a chance to sort of digest them or break them down or process them. So when you are naming your own feelings, sort of stick to feelings you know you can respond to calmly and in a sort of contained way that's not going to spill out all over the place. Because a sort of uncontained big emotion in a parent can feel really unsafe for a child. And this is why our own emotional support as parents is so important. So you're not expected to, you know, manage all those feelings perfectly. Of course, none of us do, but it's about sort of venting our big feelings to another sort of appropriate adult, be it a friend or a family or a professional. So then we can bring a more sort of manageable, bite-sized version to our children. So finally, then it's to think about really how, as an overall sort of green zone strategy, is like how you do want your child to respond. Okay, and then we want to model this ourselves. And just to remember, it's not about getting it right all the time. We just need to be good enough. We need to kind of try our best and then apologize when we get it wrong. So I'm sorry I shouted. I felt so angry when you broke my vase accidentally, but I should have calmed down first before talking to you about it. So it's that repair, that apology, and that sort of modeling what we would hope our children might be able to do. So that is the end of the sort of green zone strategies and the end of this session. So thanks for coming along.